Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast that celebrates the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. And for Season 2, we are diving into Blazing Saddles. And today, for Hump Day, we are looking at minute number 43, one reappearing, disappearing biscuit at a time. I'm your host. I'm Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host and second fiddle, Walt Murray.
And even though we're here every day, our guests always take first chair. We have Tim Andrews from Radio Labyrinth and from the Von Haessler Doctrine, WSB Atlanta. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
And Jeff Leiboff, also with Radio Labyrinth, the podcast. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Great to have you guys back here in studios with us for Hump Day, halfway through the week. We love, this is Igor's favorite day of the week. What hump?
Speaking of Igor, we have some gifts for you for having us on the
wait a minute. You did that last What is this?
podcast. These are some
Oh my
goodness.
some little gifts Tim and I chipped in on. There's Igor and
Holy
Dr.
crap.
Are these like a pseudo bobblehead, or are these like a action figure? This one's all bubble wrapped.
Yeah, you can take the bubble wrap off that one.
I'm doing this live. Look at this. Oh my God. I just saw.
That is amazing.
Hold on.
Why do you always get a warped one?
Yeah, you always get the warped one.
We got a paddle ball.
Where did you find the paddle ball?
Little Red Devils, they'll play anything.
They still make those.
Hello, girls.
This is fantastic. Well, thank
That
you guys.
is awesome.
Hey, Tim, we need to get you. We'll do it. We'll take a picture with it and we'll put it on our page. If you want to take a quick snapshot, whatever. Show what it looks like to actually be in here working. But we'll put
Yes,
that.
or
We just gotta make
whatever.
sure we put it up on the day that this episode goes live. Thank you. Look at that.
That is
Igor
amazing.
And Dr. Frankenstein. Fantastic.
Jeff.
How come I always get the warped one?
These things are defective, right as usual, sir. What do you want, Hetty? That's
You can
Headley.
sue her.
It's 1874. You can sue her. All the minutes we've already covered, and that's great because we're having a nice recap here for this Wednesday. Guys, thank you. That is awesome.
That is really amazing.
really, really, really
You're
cool.
welcome.
Thank you guys so much. Let's go ahead and just dive right in here because where we left off, we were midway through the campfire scene, the iconic campfire scene that first introduced flatulence as a comedy bit for all of the movie-going audiences. But today we're going to continue this moment. We're going to actually start off with an interesting line that starts off, Mongo, holy shit. And then we're going to end with a setting of Rockridge, the town, Main Street, sort of like reestablishing the next day, sort of as we are getting back to what's going on with maybe Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid. For now, though, let's go ahead and dive right into this. The script is different than what we're seeing in the actual footage or the theatrical release that we have here in studios. Lyle says, why don't we give him to Mongo? And he has an extra line where he's supposed to say, Mongo'd sure see to his ass. Then all the henchmen are like, Mongo, great idea. Have a heart, Taggart. No, hey, Mongo, will he eat him for breakfast? They all laugh. And then Taggart goes over, what do you say, Mongo? Then Mongo's like, just sitting there looking at him. And then Taggart continues, well, Mongo, how would you like to mutilate the new sheriff? Mongo, whoa. Taggart, good boy. Then Mongo, now, how you want sheriff killed? All at once or little pieces? Taggart, use your own warped judgment. Mongo, whoa. And that's it. We have no cigar lighting. We have no hat thing. And we've got a couple of lines that are different from what we had from yesterday. And I told you, remember that line about Enoch? Do you hear what Taggart says to Lyle after he says, let's give him to Mongo?
No.
I mean, that is an Enoch idea.
I always thought he says that is an evil idea. It's not. He says that is an Enoch idea.
That is an Enoch idea.
I've never caught that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah.
He says, because the joke that was left out of the whole unique versus Enoch we talked about yesterday, I never caught it until all of a sudden I was really paying attention. He does not say that is an evil idea. He says that is an unique idea.
Wow. And that's from the joke that was left out.
But they couldn't leave out Taggart's line transitioning to Mongo, so they just left it in there.
That's cool.
And as an audience member, I always filled it in as the word evil.
I did too.
Look at that. Y'all learned something today. My work here is done.
We're done. That's a wrap.
Yeah, listen to it very, very closely at the very, very beginning. Plus, I also want to point out there's a sound cue here. I don't think it's Taggart saying this, because what happens in the movie is right after, let's give him to Mongo. We hear somebody say, holy shit, that's too cruel. If you listen, it doesn't sound like Slim Pickens.
Holy shit, that's too cruel.
Mm-mm.
It sounds like one of the guys just around the fireplace is just, or the fire pit is saying that.
I used to think it was Slim Pickens until I was watching recently, getting ready for this, and I don't know what caught my eye about it, but it was not him.
So who said it? Was it
just
Burp
one
guy?
of the, yeah, it's probably Burp guy.
Burp guy.
Whatever guy sitting around the campfire was a SAG member said it.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Slim Pickens because that's who's having the conversation.
That's what I thought.
When it's a cutaway to Mongo and he's got that big giant, we got to talk about him just in general, but just that big giant ladle of beans and he's just eating like
Right out of the pot.
Straight out of the pot.
Steaming hot pot of beans.
I mean, I always thought it was Slim Pickens who said that, but it wasn't.
So you've written movies and stuff. Is there any time when something with the phrase shit in it isn't funny? Because I don't care what you put with it, it always makes me laugh.
Don't know.
Because you have prairie shit, holy shit. I mean, you got a lot of shit in this movie that is really funny.
I think you're just enjoying the fact that you're creating work for me now to go back and edit all those
Yeah.
Oh, you put little bleeps on that?
Yes.
Holy shit.
I keep it a for safe podcast.
That's smart. We don't do that.
Oh, no, you don't.
No. Hell no.
I'll let that slide. I gotta let some words slide.
If you work Monday through Friday or you work in radio, you know when you can and when you can't.
Right.
And I love that because all those years I've trained my mind to not do that. I don't worry about myself.
You know what's the funniest thing is we had guys join us from the BK on the Air radio show who last season they do radio as well. And so they, much like you just said, were trained to just not let certain words go. You just know you can't. And you don't even have to think about it. You've already trained yourself. That when we started dropping some F-bombs and things, it freaked them out for the podcast. So like, wait, I'm like, you can, it's okay. We're not going on the FCC does not regulate us yet. We're still okay.
I said the S word on Rock 100.5 once, but just because I wasn't thinking, it just came out.
I think the closest I get to is I'll say crap or frick.
Yeah.
Like, what are you frickin' thinking?
I've heard you say that a couple times.
And even then, I
I'm
try to
like,
keep that to an absolute minimum.
I try to make freaking flippin'.
Or I'll say freaking.
Flippin' works for me.
Or God bless America. Shut the front door. You know
what the fig Newton?
What the? I have tried to get away with shiitake mushrooms, but that one got frowned
upon. That might not go so well.
Back in my old radio days, it was WNBT in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. We ran a lot of syndicated stuff, and one of the bits we ran in the afternoons was Casey's biggest hits.
Yeah, you had to have the pause. You have to have the pause in there.
But I never did it. I always said Casey's biggest.
Oh no, we did that with Dolly Parton's greatest hits.
All right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's off of Dolly Parton's
works better
hits.
for Dolly Parton.
You got to do Dolly Parton. We do that. I'll say that. I've gotten away with that several times when I probably should not have. Like, have you ever gotten your mom and dad that, the double album, Dolly Parton's greatest hits?
Dad loves it.
Yes.
He's always thumbing through that.
It flops open. It's a double album.
It's like Miss Stein walking the parapet.
Yes. Nipple.
Wait, do I have to bleep that? Oh, no. I'll have to think about that when I go back to it.
Before we get into the whole Mongo thing, just going back to yesterday's episode, do you guys think that the campfire scene is like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it the titular scene of the movie, but is it the scene that the movie's named from? Because it's obviously this bean eating that is causing the saddles to blaze in the first place.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Right. So remember we talked about this. Oh, you having a hard time keeping your mic up?
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Keep it up,
Tim.
You are getting to that age where you should start thinking about blood flow medication.
Yes.
So the script was originally called Tex-Ex. That's the original first draft. It was then later renamed to Black Bart, which, by the way, keep that name because up until the last minute, it was going to be Black Bart. And you can see in the scene, and I'm going to kind of tease this for our audience to come back at the very end of the season, right when they go to Grumman's Chinese Theater, you see one of the posters is showing the movie Black Bart. And when you see Blazing Saddles, that's actually been matte painted in place because it was initially saying Black Bart. So up until the last minute, they were waiting to call this movie Black Bart. But according to legend, or Mel Brooks' own story, he said he was in the shower and it just came to him out of nowhere to call it Blazing Saddles. He ran it by his wife, Anne Bancroft, and goes, "What do you think about Blazing Saddles?" And she goes, "I love it." So we can thank whatever inspiration hit him in the, I don't know what he was doing, but whatever hit him in the shower and the fact that Anne Bancroft gave it her blessing.
Well, it makes for a better song.
It does. Well, and you know what? Maybe it was one of those things that just fell into place. And I do think you're right, Jeff. I do think that there was a unique or definite double entendre there of the meaning of Blazing Saddles.
No doubt.
So
You can't eat that many beans and ride that many horses without blazing a few saddles.
in fact, Mel Brooks even said, he goes, you had to think, and that's what he said. He goes, I can justify this scene because if you're eating beans and drinking black coffee, which is all they would have had,
Right.
It's not that they're not drinking sodas and beer on the prairie rides. It's black coffee and beans and probably some kind of bread. And he goes,
Or a little bacon or whatever.
yeah, some kind of
Hardtack.
maybe a salt tack or a hardtack. What do you call it? Hardtack?
Hardtack.
And then maybe some salted pork or something. But basically, a very protein-rich diet.
Yeah.
And protein does lead to gas. Hey, now, who was that? Sorry, man.
I didn't get a harumph out of it.
I didn't get her own. All right, so we don't know who's yelling the line. Holy shit, that's too cruel. It's definitely not Taggart. And then Taggart does add in a line. He says,
I mean, that is an Enoch idea.
which we've just talked about. He does not say that is an evil idea. And I don't know why. For the longest time until today, until basically getting ready for this episode, I had never heard him say Enoch. It's crazy.
No, I sure haven't.
Now you will never not be able to
I'm
hear
gonna
it.
have to go back and watch that
I'm
scene
gonna have to watch
again.
it again too.
This is also something they came up with the day of shooting. They never had in the script that Mongo was going to act like some kind of a pit bull chained up and that he has to beat him with his riding crop to get him to submit.
Get him to smell his hand.
And then finally
like a dog.
to get close enough to let him smell through his gloved hand, by the way.
It's just so weird. I mean, that's such a weird thing.
I like that though because it takes the responsibility. You don't have to give him any lines. He can just act like a monster, and it's funny.
Here, it's me, Taggart. Your old boss. Here, smell, boss. Yeah, that's a good Mongo. That's a good Mongo. Yeah.
Right, and it'll play into the joke later about when the Waco Kid says he's not so much of a who as more of a what.
Yeah,
Like, he doesn't really fit a category. He's not a male or female. He's a what. He's a thing. So funny, we've got a plotting monster in Blazing Saddles, only to find a plotting monster will be in the very next movie they do together.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Stay consistent.
Let's go back to, we talked about it yesterday, seeing it for the very first time. I mentioned the idea of the guy sitting there like he's off by himself. He's got the huge, pot of beans. He's eating with a ladle that you're losing. Like he would serve people on a serving line with that size of ladle. I laughed my butt off as a kid. And to me, it's still one of the funniest introductions of the character.
Oh, I think so too. And it reminds me of, camping out and stuff like that when you you probably wouldn't eat hot beans out of the pan like that, but
Visually, I mean, the
Visually,
thing
it's
is
great.
so huge.
It just establishes its character so well. Like
right.
Slim Pickens coming in and hitting him with the whip.
yeah.
He's got to hit him over the head like about 7 times with the riding crop. He's just like, remember, it's the same one that he thunks Lyle with early when Lyle suggests getting horses to check the line. He's like, horses? We can't afford to lose no horses. And then, of course, we get the iconic line about who you can't afford to lose.
Right.
But he hits Mongo over and over and over. And I love Alex Carrick's like, like he wants to chew his face off. And he's trying to get him to calm down enough to like, smell, master.
Poor Mr. Papadopoulos.
Well, since hearing Burton talk about Mongo and how Alex Karras, what Alex Karras thought of the character, it is a crazy character for him to be playing. because it is so
How many years out of
opposite.
football was he?
Oh, not many.
Not many. I think, wasn't he? Didn't he finish in 72?
He retired in 70.
70. Okay.
70, all right.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'll give you the quick rundown on him. He was born July 15th, 1935 in Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana.
He died.
Hey, we're back to the Music Man.
Yeah, there we go. And then he died in October of 2012, fairly recently in Los Angeles. He played football at Iowa and then for the Detroit Lions from 1958 to 1970. And not surprisingly, he was a defensive tackle.
Yeah, big dude.
He also twice got into pro wrestling. Right before he signed with the Lions, he was not planning on playing football, and he got into pro wrestling. And then when he had a 1-year suspension for gambling on NFL games,
Yeah,
he
got in
returned to
trouble for
pro
that.
wrestling. Yeah. And so he had a short stint there. He was also one of the first people to file a lawsuit against the NFL for head injury syndrome.
I didn't know
For
that.
concussion
For
syndrome.
CTE?
Yeah, I didn't know that either. He has 38 credits, acting credits on IMDb, including his first one, Paper Lion, in 1968. So even before he retired from football, he was already into acting. He was in The Odd Couple in 1973, Blazing Saddles, of course. 1974, he was on an episode of MASH, which is one of my favorite shows. This is a strange one for him. 1982, he was in the movie Victor Victoria.
Oh, that was the
Remember
first time we ever had
Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews,
Julie
go
Andrews.
topless.
Nah, that was SOB.
Yeah, SOB.
Oh, was that SOB? Oh, that's right. Victor Victoria is when she was pretending to be the guy,
She's
pretending
a
to be the girl.
man
who was-
pretending a woman pretending to be a man.
That's right.
Yes.
That's that one. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Or
from
a woman pretending to be a man playing a woman. That's
Right. It was just like the triple take of the gender swapping.
Yeah, it was a mess. It was a confusing mess. I remember seeing it and just like, what am I watching?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that he's probably most famous for is the show Webster from 1983 to 89. And then his last credit was from 1998, a show called The Tom Show, which I have no idea
I never heard of that.
what that is.
either.
I think it was.
Watch Webster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Now, when you watched Webster, could you see anything remotely similar between how he looked in that to how he looks as Mongo? Because that used to drive me
Webster?
nuts. Yeah, Webster. Yeah, I was like, how did he get so big?
Webster never got big. Oh, you're talking about
No, I meant
No,
Alex
he
Karras.
absolutely not.
I
He-
don't know if it's because maybe his face changed and he also lost some of the muscle and some of the, just the size. But I kept saying, like, that can't be the same guy from Blazing Saddles.
It blew my mind when I figured it out.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
He didn't look anything the
And
same.
then he grew a mustache.
He didn't have a mustache for it.
And he looked more fatherly
He did.
in that. So.
And I don't know if you guys had the same issue when you will go back and watch, if you remember watching Webster as a kid or as a teenager or whatever when it was on TV. But it just didn't look like Alex Karras. Like, that is a totally different person. And like, nope, same guy from Blazing Saddles.
One thing I liked, at first when I saw the commercial for Webster, I thought this is ABC ripping off Different Strokes.
That's what I thought too.
But then you watch the show, and at least Webster is believable, way more so than how those two kids got adopted by Mr. Drummond.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it was probably a better show, but I don't know if it was necessarily as...
Well, no Dana Plato. And when you're
I think
a
everyone-
growing boy, Dana Plato was good eye candy.
Well,
Yeah, she was.
I think everyone knows Different Strokes, and everybody knows the line. What you talking about, Willis?
Right.
Like that is anybody that's probably 30 and older knows that line. If you use that line, they know where it's coming from. Was there a tagline in Webster? There wasn't
I
any.
can recall.
No.
He was just precocious, right?
Right. I mean, it was a fun, family friendly show. It was good for the kids, good for adults. It was like a safe show.
For a
But-
while, he's from.
Yeah, we hung out with him at Music Midtown one year.
Yeah,
Did you really?
Yeah, Emmanuel Lewis.
Yeah, because he's from Atlanta, right?
It's Fayetteville or South Side. What is Fayetteville on the South Side?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, then he's from Fayetteville.
Wow, that's cool.
Now he lives in Native Americans on some reservation in either Canada or Alaska, or he was last I knew.
Well, when you guys ran into him, because I mean that's really all he ever really did. I mean, I think there was maybe a cameo in a movie or two, but for the most part, that's it.
Yeah,
Is he one of those guys that's like bitter about it, or is he cool about it? Like,
I thought
what
he
did you
was
think?
cool. Wasn't
Yeah,
he?
he was really cool.
Okay,
Seemed like a decent dude.
didn't have that like the child actor syndrome.
No,
No.
he was friends with Southside Steve from the Regular Guy show, and of course, Southside Steve's a legend in Atlanta radio. So he
Sorry, was I not supposed to laugh? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, he is, whether you like him or
Yeah,
not.
come on.
That's up to you, but he is a legend in Atlanta radio. He's been around forever. But they were friends. And
Yeah,
so
come on.
Come on. And he brought him on, we always had the backstage back when I was
Right.
promotions director. So we were able to just hang in the compound, and Webster was there.
Huh.
Or whatever's wrong.
Emmanuel Lewis.
Emmanuel Lewis.
I bet he would have a very hard time just being out in the crowd because he would be so recognizable.
He said the thing that always bothered him the most was people wanted to pick him up.
Oh, gosh.
I gotta imagine that would be.
Yeah.
But who would, okay, first of all, do you not just have, like, I got that with pregnant women. I used to say, pregnant women used to say, why are people, they want to come up and touch my stomach.
Right.
I would never think to do that. And I guess maybe some people just go, oh, isn't he so cute? Like, no, he's not a puppy.
No, I'm 40. Put me down.
I'm 40.
50 now. I'm
you
sure
up,
he's
man.
close to 50 now.
Well, I don't know. I'm just not a real, like, up close and personal kind of person with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just never would think about doing something like that.
Are you Irish?
Yeah.
Well, we don't want the Irish.
Right. That's why I hate this movie.
We need you out of here. Pack your shit.
Well, prairie shit. We'll take everybody.
All right. Well, we now know that there's a line in here that was added. We now know where the unique line comes from. When he finally gets Mongo to calm down, I want to point out something to you guys. When he first walks over to him at about 13 seconds, I want you to look very closely. In his left hand, he's got some kind of a half loaf of bread. He's got something in his left hand, right? Now, Taggart walks over to him, and he drops the loaf of bread at 15 seconds. Like, he drops because he's getting ready to do the whole, right? So he's getting beat over the head. Now, we're going to come in for a close-up on Mongo, and right at about 21 seconds, he's got the bread back magically in his hands. The biscuit shows right back up.
Editing.
Continuity.
So he's got the biscuit in his hand. Then we cut back out after he starts to sniff the glove. He's like, here, sniff, master, smell, remember me? He's like, oh. We come back to about second 28,
Yep, and it's
it's
gone.
gone again. So obviously we had two different takes, the close-up and the far. We had an establishing shot where he's like, well, I remember holding the biscuit. But it's completely all messed up. So the disappearing, reappearing biscuit in Mongo's hand.
Now, if you're not looking for it, that goes by so fast you would never notice. Right?
No, I wouldn't have noticed that.
You know what, though? I have been one of these people forever. It drives my wife nuts. I notice continuity errors. Things like, oh, his tie is not the same as it was just a second ago. Or, look, the gun's not cocked like it was when he just had it in his hand.
Well, remember the scene in Goodfellas where Tommy hits the restaurant owner over the head with a bottle, and then they go talk, they go to Henry, and the restaurant owner go to talk to Paulie.
It's been a while, so I know the scene you're talking about, but I don't remember.
I know what you're
And
talking
he goes,
about.
"What am I supposed to do with him? He's a bad seed, and what am I supposed to do? Kill him?" But while during that scene's going on, he's smoking a big cigar, and he's puffing, and he says, "What am I supposed to do? Kill him?" The restaurant owner goes, "That wouldn't be a bad idea." They cut back to him, and the cigar's in an ashtray, and he's just staring at him.
Just staring at him. Like, how did it magically
And
get in the ashtray?
First time I ever noticed a blatant continuity problem. But Scorsese has them in all of his movies, and I don't know if he does it on purpose or not.
It's so hard to not have them. The problem
Right.
is you're trusting actors to remember not just their lines and their attitudes and their motivations, but every minute, every bit of minutia of their movements.
Right.
From when did they put their hand down on a word, or did they break? You knew this, Walt. You went to lunch. If you guys didn't know, Walt was in the movie Into Darkness, the J.J. Abrams second edition of the Star Trek reboots.
Oh, really?
And you didn't even think about which side of the satchel you
Right.
had. You had a bag. He's like, well, did I have it on my right? And you don't even think
I
about
didn't even think
stuff
about
like
it.
that.
I just put it back on, and the lady walked up and goes, "Nope, other side." And I was like,
That's
what are
why
you
there's whole units now.
Right.
There's a continuity team that goes around. I remember one of the first things I thought about when the digital cameras were starting to come out. One of the few industries still using Polaroids every single day were the movie industry, because they would take pictures of you before they would take a break. So that way you could come back and look at your picture and make sure that you could put yourself back the exact same way. Because a lot of times if you're breaking for lunch, they want you to get out of the costume or put something over it so you don't get anything on your clothes.
Right.
So that's where you all of a sudden see a button is not buttoned all the way up, or maybe the cuff is rolled differently, or the tie's not exactly the same. The most blatant one I saw when I started getting into like watching movies more specifically was in Terminator 2, when the kid is talking with Arnold in the parking lot, and the two guys come over. He's like, "Is this guy bothering you?" And the kid initially thinks it's cool to have his own Terminator, but he realizes the danger is the Terminator is going to kill the people.
Yeah.
He's got the gun, and in one scene, close up, gun's cocked. Then he puts it in his pants. It's not cocked. Then it's cocked again. I'm like, and it drove me nuts. I
Yeah.
can't unsee. Like, it's so blatant
And
because it's
we watch
just
it again,
them.
you know it's coming.
Yeah,
Right.
So
Well,
now,
the thing I always catch is cups.
Right.
Like how empty and full cups are.
that, or when somebody pretends to drink from a quote unquote full cup.
Right.
I hate
Yeah.
that. And you can tell. It looks like they got an empty cup.
Yeah, so
Remember our
that's
friend,
something-
our actor buddy Adam. He said,
Oh, yeah.
he said, you know what? Give me a cup with something in it. I don't want to look like, I don't want to pull the audience out by saying, oh, that cup's got nothing in it. because you can tell.
Yeah,
So-
you can.
All right, so we've got the disappearing, reappearing. Then we get the lines that are absolutely correct where he goes, how'd you like to go mutilate that new sheriff? Which is a great line. Not just kill. How'd you like to go mutilate that new sheriff? He's like, oh, he's so happy about it. It's awesome.
I can see Mel Brooks just totally not caring for that there's a continuity error, though. If somebody comes in, he had his bread in his hand 1 second ago, and now the bread's gone.
Yeah, but you know what? That flies in the face of Lyle's scene, because Lyle goes, "Oh, I forgot. I had my hat. I didn't have my hat on. Let me put it back on." And they go, "No, you can't put it back on now."
True.
So
But I could see Mel Brooks just being like, "There's a taxi cab in this movie. It's 1874."
you know what though? You talked about early me writing and being involved with filming and video. Sometimes you don't notice what happened until you get in the editing room, and then you have to decide what's more important: the better take or what's more accurate continuity wise. And you will more often than not, you'll take the better performance.
Right.
You know, I'd rather
Well,
leave
it
an
makes
error
sense.
in. And most people don't catch it. Like my wife, it goes right by. When I point out, she's like, I don't care. Stop
Yeah.
pointing that out.
Well, the continuity lady, when she walked by and caught the bag strap on me, I said, well, does it really matter? And she's like, oh, yeah, there are going to be people who go frame by frame looking for stuff like that.
Yeah. And well, now with the internet and people putting everything on websites and, I don't know, breaking things down a minute at a time, looking for minutia. I mean, stupid shit like that. I mean, who would ever want to do that?
Right. These idiots doing 1 minute at a time.
I'm going to do a minute-by-minute breakdown of how the West was won. It's going to take me the rest of my life.
You better live to
I
137.
was going to
too.
do the Even Wilder Ride podcast where I break down the Wilder Ride podcast 1 minute at a time.
Here's what they said to open the show of minute 1, episode 1. Oh, dear Lord.
Here's when Walt dropped his pen on the table again.
If you listen really close, you're a bad edit right here. He was like, oh my God, that's a great podcast, man. Those guys really dive in. They know that show inside and out.
Here's when the train goes by again.
We're all looking for something that no one else has done, right?
Here's when Walt responded to a question Alan didn't ask.
And so far, we're still not making our fortunes. I can't
Not
figure that
quite.
out. We're missing some secret
quite
ingredient.
yet.
Oh, yeah, your name ain't Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that's what the
yeah.
that's what the problem is. Getting back to costume design, we know we brought up Alex Karras yesterday in all of his credits. I love like the big heavy link chains around his neck. I mean,
awesome.
He is very much the yard, like the junkyard dog. He's very much like the pit bull that's just this massive, vicious hound that's sitting there on the edge of the camp.
Yeah, but I love his character. And as the movie goes on, I would assume that we'll love him even more. But he's kind of an endearing character.
You know what? I know we heard from Burton Gilliam said that when he and Alex were rooming during the filming, that at the end, Alex didn't really care for his character, how it was basically just a dumb character that did dumb things.
We interrupt this episode to bring you a moment from our interview with actor Burton Gilliam.
So tell us, you were the firefighter, so first time kind of getting into acting, your second picture. Alex Karras was not exactly a trained actor. I mean, fresh off being in the NFL. So what was it like working with him?
He had done a picture called Paper Lion about, I think, a year and a half.
Well, that works.
before
Paper
the
Moon
public-
with you, Paper Lion with him. You seem destined.
There you go. Yeah, a lot of paper there. And Alex and I actually lived together when we did the show, did Blazing Saddles. I stayed at the Universal Sheridan the first 2 days, and he came over to me and said, and we had already bonded, made a good, he and I had a good relationship going after 2 days. He came over to me and said, hey, where are you staying? I said, I'm over at Universal Sheridan. He said, how much did it cost you over there? And I said, $17.25. That's what it cost a day. Back then, now you can't get a room there for less than $250 or so. But that's special deal, I guess, for an actor. I don't know. But that's where they set me up, $17.25. Of course, I was making $75 a day per diem, so I was putting some money in my pocket.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
But he said, well, look, I've got this 2-bedroom apartment over in Studio City, 5 minutes away from the studio, and you got your car. I drove my car out, and he said, and he didn't. He flew out. He said, come over to stay with me. Won't cost you a dime, and we got your car. So he and I were together for 4 weeks, and it was the best 4 weeks. We had a great time. When they said that's a wrap for the day, boy, he and I we'd go to restaurants. He knew his way around Hollywood and around Los Angeles already. So we were in, and he knew how to go to these places where we could eat for nothing. They were just glad. They didn't know who I was, but they knew who Alex Karras was. Come on down.
That's fantastic.
That's
so,
awesome.
Since you roomed with him, you can give us sort of the insight. What was his take on Mongo and playing this character?
He was not really excited about the character because he thought it was just a silly character, making fun of some guy who didn't have a lot of brains. But everybody else, I thought he was great, but I don't think he ever thought that he was doing. I don't think he ever put that much credit in his character, that he really enjoyed it that much. I never had that feeling, even after the picture was over and it had become a real success. I don't think he.
Well,
really
that's too
enjoyed
bad
it.
because Mongo is a real endearing character. I like Mongo.
Oh, he's a lovable character. You bet. Oh man,
It's perfectly well written by Richard Pryor. I know he was responsible for just about all the Mongo characters and scenes.
Stuff. Yeah.
And I love the fact that Mongo is slowly won over. Like Bart, that's the beauty of this movie. He doesn't have to get on a soapbox and preach and try to win people through some rally or some speech. He wins people over by being the hero and being good all the time. And Mongo respected him and wanted to stay with Sheriff Bart.
He was that. Mongo was just a real tough guy who didn't have a lot of going on for him, but he was a good person, a good guy. I loved his character, and Alex too was cut out of a lot of the picture, and he always had a bad feeling about that.
We now bring you back to the Wilder ride.
But I said to Burton, and I think you're saying the same thing, I think we all kind of gravitate toward Mongo towards, like when Sheriff Bart beats him, Mongo has respect for that, and Mongo wants to be with the good guys now,
right?
Yeah. And he has a good heart.
Yeah.
He really has a good heart.
And I know we're jumping a little ahead, but I mean, we're talking about Mongo, and I like him. He's funny, but he does some of the most outrageous things, but then he ends up picking the right side.
Right.
If there was some sort of game of life, I imagine he would be some sort of playing piece.
Jeff, I think you're right. That's some good insight.
We'll have to keep that in mind because I know the Waco kid likes playing chess.
And?
Oh, he likes to screw.
Yeah.
Let's play chess.
Let's play chess. I wanted to bring this up because some people didn't even know that Richard Pryor was one of the writers of the movie. Mm-hmm. I know we've introduced a lot of people along the way to that he was the one that helped bless all of the racial language. But Richard Pryor conceived of and wrote every one of the Mongo scenes.
Really?
He was responsible for Mongo.
That's
Did they
awesome.
ever film anything with Richard Pryor?
No.
Being the sheriff?
No, this is what's crazy. Like, if you think about the timeline, Richard Pryor still hadn't had a huge movie hit yet.
But he was big on TV and had a lot and stand-up.
And the Warner Brothers studio said he's already getting a reputation for being too involved with drugs and partying that we're not going to put, because basically what we found out is you put a lot of insurance on a movie to make sure it's going to be shot and within the budget. And you put insurance on the film to make sure that you can cover any losses that may happen. And they were worried, we can't afford with the budget you have, of putting Richard Pryor in the movie. And they wouldn't let him. And Mel Brooks was like he was going to quit the picture because he really wanted. And I know for the listeners who are here every single day, we've said this story, but Richard Pryor is the one who convinced him. Said, "No, look, I'm still involved with writing. I'm still going to get paid as a writer, and I'll help you." And he actually helped choose Cleavon Little. When he saw Cleavon Little come in for the audition, he was with Mel, and he said, "That's Sheriff Bart right there. You've got Sheriff Bart."
The head writer was Kellerman, right?
No, it was Andrew Bergman.
Bergman. Okay, so I saw an interview with him last week, and he was commenting on Richard Pryor, and he said he was great to write with, but we would have things like we would have a writer's meeting, and nobody could find Richard. And he'd call and say, "Hey, sorry, I'm in Chicago. I met two women at this thing. And,
Can somebody send me some money?
Yeah, can somebody send me some money so I can get
home?"
back? So,
So
they were
he
already
was-
having those problems before they even started filming.
Yeah, so Warner Brothers, and if you think about it, up until this year, until 1974, when this movie came out, and then he would follow it up in the same year with Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks was known for his comedy, but he hadn't had a blockbuster. He hadn't really had a mega hit.
That's why it's kind of funny, the line later on in the movie where I'm working for Mel Brooks.
Right.
What does that mean in that year?
right.
Well, maybe
It means a lot now.
It was prophetic.
It was prophetic.
But yeah, he did not have that huge mega hit, so the studio was not going to risk the money on a Richard Pryor, who at that point, like I said, didn't even have a big movie studio hit yet. Now, you will see later pairings between him and Gene Wilder, which are fantastic for the most part. But we never see Gene Wilder and Cleavon Little, which I would have thought would have been a natural pairing up because these two guys are so good to each other, with each other on the screen.
Yeah. Do you think it would have been better with Richard
I don't
Pryor?
know. Cleavon Little is so great as Bart. It would have been interesting, though, to see like some outtakes if they ever had filmed any scenes.
Any test footage or
with
something,
Richard
like
Pryor.
screen tests?
Yeah, being the sheriff.
Well, and it wouldn't have been with Gene. It would have been with
Gig Young.
Gig Young.
Gig
yeah.
Young. Yeah.
It's amazing how sometimes things just happen that thank God they did. Otherwise, the movie may not have been a big hit.
Right, and it could have been completely different.
I mean, if you had Gig Young in this, an aging, a true alcoholic,
A total
a
drunk.
leather-faced old guy that would have had a completely different delivery style than what we get with Gene Wilder, would it have been as effective?
Well, and think about it with Richard Pryor and Gig Young. You've got a guy who is on a complete lifetime cocaine bender and an absolute falling down drunk. This movie would have been a train wreck.
yeah, it may not have ever been made. Well,
Maybe.
they already knew not to trust Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they brought Gig Young on is his agent convinced him that he was off the sauce.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think the movie definitely would have been different with Pryor in that role, and the acting done by Cleavon Little is different because he's an actor, right? And Pryor wasn't an actor.
Yeah, not yet. Not
That's
yet.
a good point.
And I don't know that he ever really. I guess he did later. He started really understanding the craft, but it was right after he had gotten in his accident and freebased himself to a.
And it wasn't
crisp.
Brewster's Millions, I can tell you that.
No, it wasn't.
Pryor
Or
could,
the toy, or
I like
Superman
the toy.
3.
People hate the toy. I love the toy.
Pryor
The toy
could
has a
only-
great message. Could you imagine making a movie like that today?
No, you
Rich white guy hires a black guy to be his kid's toy.
yeah.
You think people are going flipping crazy over the N-word? How about an entire movie
my
where
gosh.
dance for me, boy? No, it ain't
Didn't
gonna
that kid
happen.
in that movie end up being in adult films?
Was it that same kid that was in the was those Kid Code movies?
Scotty,
yeah,
something
Scotty.
or other.
Yeah, I think he is.
Huh?
And he did end up in the adult industry.
That's what a my that ship has sailed the wrong direction. Well, let's because we're starting to wrap up this minute before we get into Rock Ridge. We've got this very funny visual gag now of Mongo going to light his own cigar
From a pit fire.
From the campfire.
yeah, from a
Yeah.
campfire.
If
He
you
just
look
sticks
at
his whole face right into the fire.
if you look at the shot, I hadn't until I started really paying attention. You can see that this is a propane tube that's been bent along the bottom of the rocks because it's shooting like almost little individual jets of flame.
Yeah.
And so it looks like it's a huge campfire, but it's actually all sort of like closer to us. And so he can disappear behind it, and he's obviously still safe. And then you can see the little holes in the hat where the smoke's coming out of. But when I first saw this as a kid, I immediately in my head filled it in. His head's on fire.
Right.
And it doesn't even bother Mongo.
No.
But what do you
that's
want? Go ahead, Jeff.
That's the whole thing of setting up his character. Like he can eat those steaming hot beans right out of the pot. He can stick his face right in the fire, and it doesn't bother him at all.
I mean, he's getting whooped over the head as
Right.
hard as Taggart can hit him, and it's just like not even affecting him.
And it's a. We started watching cartoons. You know, the cartoons we watched when we were little were the cartoons that our parents watched when they were older kids or whatever. But this is, they're classic Warner Brothers type slapstick,
Yeah.
and through the trickery of camera, you know, because there was no CGI or anything, obviously.
No, it's all practical.
Right, but the slapstick and stuff in this it's really just, you know, cartoons, comedy, and all that.
In some ways, couldn't you argue that this is a Looney Tunes live action cartoon?
Yeah, that's what I
It
meant.
has that feel, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, even the sound effects, I pointed that out before. The thumps,
Yeah.
it sounds like a thump you'd hear in a cartoon. The bongs, the thumps, the hits, the explosions, it all sounds like I've heard this all on Bugs Bunny or, you know, or Daffy Duck or Porky Pig, you know?
Well, we'll talk about this a little bit more a few days from now, but the outtakes even more so. Have y'all seen the outtakes on YouTube?
No,
The
I'm
stuff
gonna
that
do
didn't
that
make the
today.
cut? Yeah, those are even more cartoonish.
Yeah, when we get, we're going to be coming up to those here shortly. I think next week or the week after, we've got those minutes coming up where Mongo comes into town and Sheriff Bart has to defeat him. This is the one area where I disagree with the editing of the theatrical version. I like the fact that Bart beats him 3 times in what was both in the script and what they filmed. They only kept one, the bar scene with the exploding candygram, but on TV, they re-added the 2 scenes as well. So I always grew up with the TV version first. So I actually was disappointed when I finally saw the theatrical. I'm like, oh, this is great, all this language that I got to hear. I'm like, wait, where's the diving scene? Where's the put a quarter in the machine scene?
Right.
And I feel like those should be in the theatrical. I wish they had.
I wish they had too, and I don't think that there was a time constraint because it's only 96 minutes.
No, I don't know why he cut it down. I guess Mel Brooks just thought in his mind at the time it slowed the movie down. We beat him once, we don't need to beat him 3 times. But I like that Bart beats him 3 different, unique ways. That shows just how good Bart is. But maybe looking back, if you asked him, if we could ever get Mel Brooks to respond to one of our inquiries to get him on the show,
apparently he's heard a thing, huh?
He's I don't know. Apparently,
even
the
when
receptionist
people
isn't giving him the message.
Yeah, and even when people throw around wild accusations at us on Twitter, and
did you hear that?
Put an at.
We got somebody came after us on Twitter. They said, "Did you know you're stealing Mel Brooks's material?" I'm like, have you even listened to the show?
Yeah.
How are we stealing anything?
Did they respond after that?
No, of course not.
No. I was a little bit.
I love the Twitterverse.
Alan was nicer than I was in his response, and that kind of shut it down.
Anyway, all right, so we've got him lighting his head on fire. We're going to immediately leave from this scene to set up, looks like the next day in downtown Rockridge. So there's not a whole lot to say except for establishing a time jump of some period of time because we were at night, and now we've faded into this scene in Rockridge. We hear kind of the banjo playing the theme of the Ballad of Rockridge. So before we wrap up, because this is the last minutes we've got you guys, Tim, anything more about at least this minute you want to talk about?
Not really. It's not as iconic as the previous minute, but it really does a great job breaking up the fart scene, giving you a little time to recoup, and then you can get right back into the story.
But the introduction of Mongo, it's so well done in a very short period of time.
It is, but it really is here's this guy, but it's a bridge between the fart and let's go back to Rockridge.
Right.
And you get a nice establishing shot, and you can see how idyllic the town of Rockridge is, and really before it starts turning to shit.
God, another one of those I'm going to have to clip. Walt, before we wrap up with our guys here, anything about this minute that you have in your notes?
I think we've covered it.
All right, since this is the last time we're going to have both of you gents, Jeff, I'll go to you first. Your chance to kind of sound off on, since we only had you for 2 minutes, we did jump around a little bit, but anything about the movie in general you want to leave as your final comments?
This is probably the funniest movie of all time, and it's sad to me that people take it the wrong way and just look at the N-word and the usage of it, and they don't see the big picture that this is slapping the face of racism, and it's not celebrating racism at all.
No, it's the exact opposite. Yeah. It's not endorsing. It's showing you through comedy how stupid it is to judge people by anything other than their actions.
Right, and a movie like this could not be made today.
Isn't that a sad statement to say?
The reason it can't be made and why it's sad is because people aren't taught that language is nuanced, and people aren't taught to think for themselves. Jeff's right. It's sad that you can't make this movie today because people will focus again on the word instead of the usage of the word.
Right. And exactly, if you shut yourself down just because you hear the word and you miss the context, it's always is the key word, and people have lost the ability to understand the contextual use of the line, of the word, of the scene. There's a purpose behind it.
I quote George Carlin a lot, as you know, because I've listened to his albums a million times. But he does this whole bit for years ago. He goes, "There's no bad words, just bad thoughts. There's bad intentions and words."
Words. I asked that. I said, is it the actual word itself, or is it the meaning of the word?
It's the meaning.
And like, no, it's the word. I'm like, well, what do you mean?
It's not the word.
Because I can say poo on the air, and that's not a problem. Mm-hmm. I can't say shit.
Right.
It means the same thing.
Right. Well, another George Carlin, you can say, I think he's talking, Trey Gowdy can say, not Trey Gowdy, he goes, Kirk Gowdy can say, Roberto Clementi's got 2 balls on him, but he can't say, I think he hurt his balls on that play.
Right.
Yeah. You can prick your finger, but don't finger your
prick. There's a perfect example of context.
Yeah.
And if you completely ignore the context, you completely ignore the genius of this movie.
Exactly.
Awesome. So you're kind of giving your final thoughts. And is there anything else you want to add?
I'd like to add a final thought. No, that's
you know what's funny? We never got one damn voice out of the man of a
You don't
thousand
need them.
voices.
We got a few. He peppered him in a little.
Monday through Friday, the Von Haessler Doctrine.
Give us a little Slim Pickens, though, before we go.
God, you do it fine.
I do a Slim Pickens.
Yeah, let's hear your Slim Pickens.
My Slim Pickens.
What in the wide, wide? Say, I can't do it.
Yeah, you can't do that. What in the wide, wide world of sports is it going
Somebody
on?
do the sound of a plane flying like. Do that.
One prophylactic, one Russian American dictionary, vitamins.
You ought to be able to bust out a Burton Gilliam
Well, I'd have to
impression,
watch
too.
the
You need to
scene,
work
yeah.
on that.
Well, when you were slaves, you all sang like birds.
Camptown Lady.
Oh, you know. You know, were you talking about this the other day? It was either on the show or on the podcast. I think it was you and Autumn were talking about how you do voices, and you almost have to do the facial expressions as well. Like if you don't contort
I
into
have
the same
because
facial
I'm a mimic. I'm not an impressionist. I'm not
Right.
somebody that can. I'm going to do a whole stand-up routine of doing voices. I'm a mimic,
Right.
and for me, mimicking is easier. There are people that I can really, really do, but it's easier for me to just to mimic people.
But I think that's important. And you have to keep that in mind. And I find myself will contort like my jaw or my face or your mouth in a certain way to try to get that. And like Burton, you just got to be like having like a goofy ass smile. Those
Yeah, you
like
gotta get that
Burton
big grin on your
Gilliam,
face.
you know.
Let's hear us a good old fashioned.
Yes, exactly. It's just like that.
song.
When you were slaves, you sang like birds.
I get no thrill from
Oh,
champagne.
God, that is so good. We could sit here and just requote this movie nonstop and laugh the whole time.
Where are the white women at?
Oh, boys. I love Gene Wilder takes on that voice.
Yeah.
Looky what I got here.
Yeah.
All right.
Chewing gum online.
Tim, you are responsible for being one of the voices of a hit radio show in the 7th biggest market, the #1 radio station in Atlanta. Tell people how they could tune in and listen to you.
You can tune in Monday through Friday, 95.5 FM, AM 750 WSB on your radio dial. There's also the WSB radio app and the iHeart radio app. iHeartRadio app.
And you can also tune in on Alexa.
You can.
You tell your Alexa, listen to WSB Radio. And you also have a podcast, but I'll let Jeff, who's also on your podcast religiously, tell us a little bit about the Radio
The
Labyrinth.
Radio Labyrinth podcast. We're out.
Radio Labyrinth.
We're out every week.
I've never heard it.
Doesn't usually happen.
Tim's mic keeps dropping on him.
Tim's mic
He's
keeps
got a
falling
droopy mic. I thought it was supposed to last 4 hours. It's not even been 2.
Well, I bet I had. Well, anyway, I'm fading
It's fading. He's only used to a 2-hour podcast.
like my mic.
Oh, so we're a pop culture podcast. We just talk about what's going on in the world of TV, movies, films, comedy.
And you have guests come in and out as well.
Right.
It's never always the same cast.
And we're going to get you guys back on the podcast
Yep.
as soon as we can to promote this new season,
That could be fun.
And you can swear.
Blazing Saddles.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to here. We can. I just have to bleep.
Right.
So, yeah, check it out, folks. Radio Labyrinth on every one of your podcatchers of choice. It's fantastic, and it's so much fun. It is a not safe for work, so make sure you got the earbuds in, or keep the kids out of the car when you're listening, running around, you're doing your errands like I like to do now. And then during the summer, I love doing all the outdoor work and listening because it makes all those outdoor chores somewhat more, they pass by a little bit more easily. Walt, where can people learn about us?
Well, what you want to do today is go to facebook.com/The Wilder Ride and join our listeners group so that you can see the 2 vinyl idols that Jeff and Tim brought us and the paddle. But we've got a Dr. Frankenstein and an Igor.
Get it right.
Golly.
You should go
That
back
was
to
last year. I
Go
can't
back to
keep
season
up with
1.
this. And so you definitely want to see that. Also, we would really appreciate it if you take a second to go to patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. Take a look at the offerings that we have there. And if you can help out a little bit with helping us cover some of the expenses. There's some great opportunities there to do that, get some bonus material, and find out a little bit more about us.
And come back tomorrow. We still have 2 more episodes this week. Thursday, we've got the very beginning of the minute. We're going to show Jim is finally getting a clean shave. He's shaving up that 5-day shadow, or the 5 o'clock shadow from being in the drunk tank. And we're going to end with, I don't want you going out there this morning. Going out where and why and what's the problem? I thought the sheriff was the sheriff. He's in town. So
do what he wants.
You got to come back tomorrow, find out what's going on this, The Wilder Ride.
Holy shit. That's too cruel.
Up yours, Alan.
Aw.
The sheriff is...
Dong. Ditto. Ditto.
Ditto.
Ditto.
Are we still rolling?
We were.
Oh.
We are.
Because the first thing that ever made me laugh in this film, I just remembered it. The thing that made me laugh the hardest the first time I saw it was the song. He likes to keep his bum clean. And then he hawks and spits a loogie in the glass. That made me laugh the hardest.
Did you know until this episode, I had no idea that his name was Anal Johnson?
Yep, Anal Johnson.
For some reason, I just never heard anal. I thought it was that age-old Johnson. Always kept things nice and clean until Walt sends me a thing, goes, and then Anal Johnson's played by, I'm like, I think you got a typo. Nope.
Is Anal Johnson listed on that list of Johnsons in the background of the scene?
Well, all the Johnsons only have their first initial and middle initial. They don't have the full name, so.
We bought a shelving unit from IKEA or someplace, and Target maybe, and we went to put it together, and I put half of it together, and I had done it wrong. And I went and got a baseball bat to smash it, and she said, no! And she did it herself.
You pull it off of space. Yeah. You bring it out to a field and just beat the hell out of it.
I got a flat tire once and smashed my front fender with the tire iron because I was so frustrated and angry, which is dumb.
Yeah, because you should have just smashed the windshield and got it replaced by your insurance for much cheaper.
Oh. So you got a rage issue, huh?
Yes.
I got to be careful with that.
I keep it under control.
I'll always be a second fiddle to you.
I don't want to be first fiddle.
I have no problem. I'll be as long as I'm on the stage. That's all I care about.
I just don't want the responsibility of first fiddle.
I just don't want to be the first chair.
I'm good.
All right, so dun-da-da. Ready? And as soon as they go, let's give him to Mongo, it goes right over to, what do you say, Mongo? And Mongo's like, well, how would you like me to mutilate the new sheriff? And then Taggart says, let me back up. Sorry, my own notes.
This is going very well.
I will re-edit this. This was the magic.
You shouldn't. That's the best.
No, I may leave it for an outtake.
Behind the scenes of...
So...